Okay, Andrew. Good evening. Welcome to the February 11th Commission on Disabilities meeting. Please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Co-Chair Fernie, if you could take attendance for me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and a good evening to all. Roll call of members. Ralph DeChico. Michelle DeBellis.
She will be a little late.
Enza Goodwin.
Present.
Robert Bent.
Robert?
Present.
He's present via teleconference.
Via teleconference, okay. Albert Sheridan. Pauline Perno.
Present.
Thank you. The item 1 on our agenda is a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 14th, 2020. I had sent a copy of the minutes via email, and I also gave you a paper copy of the minutes from last meeting. So if you hadn't had a chance to look over the email, if you want to quickly go through it and make sure everything was correct, and then if everything is correct, if someone wants to make a motion.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 14th, 2020.
Second.
And second. Perfect. Okay. Item number 2 is the CODA Monthly Commission on Disabilities Alliance monthly conference call. As I stated last month, they were going to reschedule last month's meeting for the following week, but they had not. So we just had a meeting this month on Wednesday, February 4th, and we had several items on the agenda. And instead of me putting them into the meeting agenda, I'll just briefly go through it. I have my notes on it. Vice Chair Fernie, I could give this to you after, and you could and just go right from this. I could also send it to you in a Word document. Basically, what we have a new person that's basically facilitating our phone calls, which is going to be a benefit to all us commissioners that are on the call, because what it does is it makes it a lot more streamlined for us to get the notes after the call. So we had the meeting on Wednesday, and by Thursday evening, I had the notes from the meeting. So I do have the notes. I'll briefly go through some of the highlights on it, but if anyone wants the exact total notes of the meeting, please feel free to let me know and I can get them to you. But basically, Lenny, who's on, who is a member of CODA, and she also is a member of DHCP. She came to one of our meetings here last year, and she went over the AAB bill for us that we wanted to send a letter. So she updated us on some information about the AHVP, which is the housing vouchers for the line item in the governor's budget for this year. And the basic gist of it is the governor's budget came out, and the AHVP line item was funded only $5.19 million this year, which is almost $3 million was cut from that budget. Last year it was almost $8 million. What he had said, and he had proposed that the cut is going to be made up from surplus, from money that was left over from last year. But unfortunately, that's not written down and etched in stone anywhere. So we're not saying that it's not going to happen, but we can't say that it is going to happen. And the reason being that we got from the call from why there is a surplus is what happens is once the budget from the previous year is released and that money is released for those vouchers, there is a lapse in time in it. And when people do apply for that voucher, and by the time they get the housing, sometimes by the time that money comes through, they find alternate housing, and they no longer can use that from where they're going. So that's what happened, and that money was allocated. So if they no longer take it, it was already allocated. So since they don't take it, it just goes back into the fund. So that's why there's a surplus. It does not get lost. It just goes back into the fund. So that's why there's a surplus left from last year, roughly $2.8 million. So supposedly that's going to help to fund the shortfalls. But still, the advocates through CODA and other organizations had actually asked for $12 million for the AHVP fund to be funded through the budget, the state's budget, and they're still working on going through that with the state legislature. So they're still going to ask for 12 million, and there are two legislatures that are co-sponsoring that, and that's the legislatures is Eldridge and Becker. I just don't have their first names, but I believe they're the ones that have been co-sponsoring the HVP bill and the AAB bill for us. So Ways and Means Committee is having a public meeting in late March, and they'll keep me updated, and I'll let everybody updated on that. Also, the AAB bill, which we worked on by sending a letter last year, it's been released from committee with some minor language changes to make it more palatable to some groups. What that AAB bill was relatively to trying to align the state and federal architectural access board for the workplace and housing accessibilities. What happened is when some buildings, like some old mill buildings, they go in for housing, there was some reasonings and laws that they didn't have to make them handicap accessible because of certain federal laws supersede state laws, and same thing in the work environment when they're doing working areas for employees that are disabled. So what that bill was doing, and we could look back at our notes from last time, is just trying to align it to make it one conformity instead of having two and one overrules the other. So that is that's still in going to be on its way to Ways and Means, but it's tied to the budget. So there's some constraints still on that, but they'll be updating us on that. Another thing that was mentioned is that the Architectural Access Board, what oversees all the variances when contractors and developers go in, when they're doing buildings or building from the ground up or modifying buildings and they need a variance for certain areas. There was no director because the previous director had passed away unexpectedly, and through letters that we had sent, the state was trying to hire someone who possibly didn't have the qualifications from being from a disabled aspect. It was announced last month that William Joyce, who has been on the Architectural Access Board, was appointed the director, which is good news for all the Commission on Disabilities statewide. So we were happy to find that out through this meeting. So that's a good thing, and that was due entail to a lot of letters and correspondence to a lot of the State Commission on Disabilities that went through that way. And we also talked about other things that we want to try and get out of our monthly meetings, and we just wanted to try and make sure we get some more communications from after the meetings so that we can update our commissions. And anybody that's on any of the commissions throughout the state is always welcome. It doesn't just have to be the commission that can always go on these calls. If anybody on this commission always wants to reach out, they could always let me know. It's a dial-in number, so anybody can go in to one of those calls. So that was the gist of that meeting. The outline of it. There's a lot more in depth in it. If anybody wanted to take a look at it, I could email it. It's an electronic copy, so I can just reach out to me and I can get that to you. Not sure if anyone has any questions. That's just a high level of that call. It's just like keeping everybody up to date on some of the information that I find out. Whether if it's interesting or not, feel free to let me know. Okay. Item number 3 is the schedule of February events, and I'll have Ms. Goodwin, if you would be so kind as to go through that for me.
So we had CPAC had planned a cookie decorating party for Valentine's Day for this coming Thursday, but unfortunately we've had to cancel it due to lack of interest, lack of turnout, yeah. So sadly, it's probably our first time that we've had to cancel a holiday-themed party, but I imagine with the weather and the time of year that maybe that plays into it, so we're just hoping that next time around we can get more families to come out. But some good news that we have is that we have our third annual Walk for Autism coming up on Saturday, April 4th. Once again, it'll take place indoors at the high school field house. There's going to be lots of great entertainment planned, and we will be sharing more information soon. But as always, we could use volunteers and donations. So if anyone has any questions or are interested in getting involved, they could reach out to me. And more information is available on the Disabilities website.
Okay, anybody have any questions or anything else they would like to add?
Just a quick question. Will this be going into the local journal so that hopefully we get a better turnout than
Yeah,
we did
so
on your cookies?
if I'm not mistaken, I believe that as soon as this week's journal or maybe next, the save the date for the walk should be appearing in there.
Also, as a point of information, I believe we also have it on the City of Revere's municipal calendar. So it is on the city's website for the municipal calendar.
Just a quick question, because I ride around a lot, unfortunately. Are there any of the light-up boards anywhere throughout the city, like, you know how some of the high schools will have like a welcome with all their stuff posted? Do we have any within the city that kind of information could be displayed upon? Or
We could reach out to the Central Fire Station. That was an idea that I was going to give you. And also, I believe the fire station on the Parkway does have an electronic board too. So you may want to reach out to Chief Bright, Fire Chief Bright, and ask him because that's a good avenue for advertisement. Anyone else have any questions or comments on that? And I know that Enzer and Michelle have both sent out an email if we wanted to possibly set up a table or not. I'm going to actually talk and see if possibly maybe the City of Revere's Mobile City Hall might want to be there. I don't know if you want to send a communication to them, because if that's there, then we could see if we might want to have somebody from Commission on Disabilities possibly sit in that. And onto that note, I'll elaborate too, is we had a meeting for the 2020 census, and the election department has a nice table. I call it a tablecloth, but it's like a banner. It covers the whole table. And I'm looking into getting one for the Commission on Disabilities, so that we could have that for any events that we want to do. But if we could have if the Mobile City Hall would be there that day, we have that there, and I believe it has internet access. And I don't know if Vice Chair Freni ever found my big packet that I made for last year of everything that I had printed out of all the documentation for the autism walk last year that Mr. Bent had given to Vice Chair Freni, because there was a lot of documentation that I had printed for that event. Would you care to comment?
Do you want to?
I don't recall. I plead the fifth.
Enza, anything else?
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely reach out to Chief Bright. That seems like a good idea. In terms of the van, one of us on the CPAC board can go ahead and handle that and reach out. We're trying to get, right now, some sponsors and vendors to come out, and we've had a pretty good response so far. So we have a section that we're going to have set up that will be disseminating information to the family. So that would be a win-win if we could get that.
Especially with this year being the Census 2020, so the election department may want to also be there to get out the information for people to vote. So you may want to reach out to Diane Kalala in the election department and Dimple Rana in the Healthy Community Initiatives for them to be there too.
Are you reaching out to other communities as well, or is it other schools or other, like the Everett Advocate or the SOG, just to kind of, everyone's invited, not just Revere
Right.
citizens?
Yeah, so At this time, it's myself and a few other volunteers, so it's been a little bit of a struggle in the sense that working full-time, raising kids, and trying to organize this is not an easy feat, and I know everyone here can understand and can relate. So we're trying to do as much as we can throughout each day electronically, because to physically get to places and share information isn't always easily done. We're trying, but it's an ongoing process. Last year seemed to go a little bit more smoothly by this point than this year has, but we're just looking at it as a challenge and one that we will face, and we will get it done one way or another. But the support that we've had in the past just isn't quite there this year.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is a continued discussions and information regarding the ADA service animal policies from our January meeting. I had sent the MOD Office on Disabilities brochure to everyone, and I had also included one in this packet that I gave to everyone so that you have it, if you wanted to take a look at it, and any comments or anything on it.
Just a quick comment that in reading over this and reading more information, I seem to get inundated with a lot of emails. I don't know why I'm the chosen one, but I'm seeing a little bit of an overlap on service animals versus the emotional animals. And there's currently some discussion, it's not a huge discussion, but some discussion because of the circumstances that some of the people who are opting to have emotional support dogs are also eligible for service animals. It's been out in the wings. I get, like I said, a lot of emails, and I'll read a bit in a piece because I have a very short attention span. I'm the first one to admit it. But it seems that there is going to be a lot more discussion on that overlap and who actually is eligible for a service animal versus just an emotional support based upon clinical, a diagnosis, a symptom versus an actual clinical diagnosis. It was just interesting to read that there is a lot more information that seems to be up and coming as time passes. And I see a lot of just people out there that, and just at first glance, you don't know what they're going through. They're going through something, but you just don't know. So it's interesting to kind of take that and look at it from a different perspective and say, I wonder, if that person's aware, is there, the education is out there. I know that the information is there, but how many people are actually accessing this information?
Yeah, and most of the people that you would think that would be in that situation should have a caseworker. That information should be coming from the caseworker. Also, if they don't have a caseworker, their doctor. But one thing that people need to separate is a service animal and a social emotional animal. And this clearly shows you the difference in it. So then the main difference, as you can see from this, is a service animal has to do a physical task, as getting something, walking with something, more than just an emotional support. So that's the main difference between a social emotional and a service animal. So that's why the questions that can be asked. So that's why not everybody can say that an animal that they have is a service animal. So just if the dog that they have is there for emotional support, unfortunately that's not a service, because it's not physically.
Right, and I think
But if that person could need a service animal.
For another aspect.
For another aspect. Right. So that's where, when they went for a social emotional animal, whoever did their intake was supposed to evaluate them, and if they did that correctly, they would either know or not know. I can't see that they would be giving them a social emotional dog if they needed a service animal.
Right, I think a lot of it too is who is doing that intake, because I know that with more and more young people coming out of college, do they actually have that information? I mean, I don't know, it's been a lot of years since I was in college, that's for sure, but what I was prepped for coming out isn't necessarily what they are prepped for as well. And I've seen some of the assessments that are out there for evaluation of social emotional versus an actual service animal. And there are some gray zones and whatever, but I think that, if this, I don't know, where is this posted, like in public buildings? I'm.
This is posted on the Massachusetts Office of Disabilities website. It doesn't have to be posted in public buildings as of yet. I don't know if that's going to change, but that's why I have the information. And they could always reach out to the Commissions on Disabilities. I'll go right to the MOD. That's why I wanted to not only email it to all the members here and a copy, but if any residents want a copy of that, I could email them a copy of it, or they can come by my office and I could give them a copy of this brochure. But it's easily accessible at the Massachusetts Office of Disabilities website.
Excellent, thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, I have a question. It's part of the packet. Let's see here. You know what? I apologize. I will look into the whole packet. I'm a fast reader, Mr.
Okay.
Chairperson. And as I flip the page over, we'll be discussing
Yep.
on item number 6. So
Yes.
I do apologize.
I just wanted to mention that Michelle DeBellis has joined us. Thank you. No, it's fine. That's fine. Anyone else have any questions, concerns, or anything that I can try and answer? Like I said, I'm not an expert on this, but this was brought to my attention a few years ago with a few situations within different buildings and different areas within the city of Revere. So I had to find out some information on it. Okay. So now we'll move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is HP parking spots in front of Harry Delarusso Stadium discussion. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is if on the handout that I gave, the first thing is an MOD blog. It states MOD blog right on it. And if you wanted it, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at this. There's a lot of actually, well, not that one. This one is emails that I have. I'm sorry. Back in 2017, when the Commission on Disabilities was started, it was brought to my attention that Harry Delarusso Stadium, I guess when it was reconstructed, there were supposed to be some handicap parking spots that were supposed to go on right on Park Ave. And at that time, I guess it was the issue that they were having there is that with the new sidewalks, the street is narrow and they can't put sidewalks there. But what I thought was decided on that, and I do have some email correspondence between different people within the city, that what was going to be done is an eyelet was going to be cut in, such as in front of the Susan B. Anthony and Wayland School on Newhall Street, and put some handicap parking spots in there. But the issue at that time was the telephone poles were still there and not removed. But since then, they were removed, and the last communications I have between myself, Mayor Arrigo had sent emails to Community Development and the Traffic Commission wanting this to be done, that the telephone poles were moved, and we're trying to figure out why this is not done yet. And now is the time that, hopefully we can get this done. It's going to be, graduation time is going to be coming. There are a lot of students that are graduating that have some either elderly grandparents that need handicap parking or family members that need handicap parking. So I'd like to try and get this situation resolved by then and try and get that done and get it on the forefront. So what I wanted to ask for is I do have all these email correspondence that I can attach to an email, but I also wanted to put a letter together and send it to Mayor Arrigo so that he could follow through with community development and the Traffic Commission to see where this sits on that. So I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions or any concerns or any ideas on that, so that we can go ahead and create that letter.
Are we talking about, you said making an inlet on Park, I know you mentioned Susan B. Anthony, how they did it over there.
Yep.
Is that sidewalk wide enough?
It's wide enough, yes.
To
That's
have
what they
the
did.
inlet over
Yeah,
there?
yeah, and that's what they had it all determined. They were
On
supposed-
Park Ave, yeah.
On Park Ave. They had it supposedly all measured out at that time.
Okay.
And it was, the problem at that time was the telephone poles. So the telephone poles have been removed.
Right.
So you need 36 inches of clearance. So there should have been enough room for a way to do it because of where the sidewalk cuts in towards
Okay.
the stadium. So I wanted to have them to get the determination on that and try and proceed in getting that project done.
Well, being that graduation is 4 months or less away, I would find it hard to believe they're gonna be able to do that. We know construction just takes, with engineering and the plans and then putting it out for bid and getting everything done. So, that's something that should be done, but, for safety's sake, why don't we just, for the day, can we just do temporary handicap parking for that day? I mean, can we come up with something together, like some sort of handicap
Well-
signs for Park Ave? Just for, for
Well,
graduation
the only
day?
problem with Park Ave is it's not wide enough for parking on the street. That's
Right.
the problem.
Right.
So, but this was, from my understanding, this was already supposed to be designed. It was already supposed to be planned out already.
Okay.
From my understanding, the construction part just wasn't done, so that's why I want to know where it is. My suggestion is this: if this can't be done by then, is possibly using a few spots, 5 or 6 spots, right at the entrance of the stadium for handicap parking for the elderly that are ambulatory and wheelchairs, right inside the stadium there itself there. So that's Traffic Commission and the mayor's office need to decide on that, because I can't see us going another spring, summer, fall, winter
No.
season without handicap parking
No,
in front of
I totally
Herradella
totally
Stadium.
agree. I just thinking just for that day we can have it,
Yeah.
because for the high school football games, we have the big Healy buses always out there from the visiting teams.
Yeah, they drop off and they can't
Yeah,
leave.
well, sometimes they'll just,
Yeah, they're
they'll
not
just hang
supposed
there
to.
and you got one lane coming down the,
Yeah.
and it's only temporary for a couple hours on a Friday night.
It's
But I'm
not
just thinking it's
supposed
in
to.
the afternoon for graduation if we need, I can't imagine all of a sudden we're gonna have 200 handicap parking, people looking for spots, but it can happen. We're seeing more and more handicap plates. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, you're all over this, I appreciate it.
Just a quick question. If, and I'm all for, I can't wait for that to be done. I think that's a great idea. And if they can't, if they say that that construction piece cannot be done in time for graduation, would it ever be possible for that period of time during graduation to make Park Ave one way so that there could be parking on one side of the street just for that graduation piece and then have it turned back? That's also something, I know that they've done it in other communities. I don't know what it would take. I know traffic, police, the whole thing. But that would actually solve a piece of the temporary piece of it, meaning that there could be parking on one side. You would still have access without having to worry about two-way traffic, people going in and out. So that would, you could almost use that as a backup plan if it's at all possible. I don't know.
That would be,
Just
that's
throwing
why I
that
would
out.
have to, in the letter,
Right.
would have to go through the traffic. Would it be something that go through the Traffic Commission? The Traffic Commission would have to decide on that, and then what that would also do is that would put a lot of traffic going into the neighborhoods.
Yeah,
So
especially in the residential neighborhood right
Yeah,
there. I
that's
could see
the
if it was
problem right
if
there.
it was by itself.
Right,
Yeah.
but you know what? It's a very distinct period of time.
Yeah.
It's from this time to this time, and then it's over. I mean, we go
Yeah.
through it at the Pines with, on the 3rd, 4th, 5th of July, and then into August and actually September, where we're inundated with traffic. And those are permanently one-way streets. So we deal with that, and we deal with parking on both sides that we shouldn't have either. However, for a distinct period of time, if they were not able to do the construction for whatever reason, and I can't, if they say it's too cold, whatever, I think that's not an issue right now, but I think that the sooner that letter gets drafted and gets out, the sooner that you'll have at least some kind of a formal idea about which direction this is
Well,
going in.
if I'm not mistaken, parking is allowed on the opposite side of Park Ave, correct? So that's the issue.
Right,
so-
but that could also,
If they're parking on both sides, it's
Right.
going to be,
no, but you could have
Yeah.
parking on one side, and like, again, it's
Yeah.
not for 2 days, it's
Yeah.
for a very distinct start and end time, at which
Yeah.
time, and you know, it would, at least there would be enough time to have that posted, to have
Yeah.
it go through the appropriate channels, to have it,
Yeah.
you know, people aware. It's a small inconvenience, especially if that handicap parking is not going to be made available for this
yeah.
year, shall we say.
Yep, definitely. So I can put that in the letter and, any other avenues that we could try and, figure out would be great. So what I'll do is, if someone wants to make a motion that I can create a letter to send to the mayor about finding the resolution for handicap parking at Harry Della Russo Stadium, hopefully in time for the graduation ceremonies.
Motion.
Would you make a motion and someone second it?
I'll make the motion, Ralph.
Okay, Robert made the motion, and someone would second it?
Second.
All right, can I have a roll call of the members? Robert Bent? Robert? Yes? Okay. Mr. Frenny?
Yes.
Michelle?
Present.
Yeah. Enza?
Yes.
And Pauline?
Yes.
And myself, Ralph, yes. Okay, so I will draw up a letter, and I'll say it's from the full Commission on Disabilities, if that's okay, and I will try and get that to him as soon as I can. Okay, thank you. Okay. Next item, okay, this is where I wanted to get this from. Okay, next item is item 6, is a discussion on establishing a disability parking patrol program by adopting state statute, chapter 40, section 22G, which states any city or town which has accepted the provisions of section 8J, I apologize, it should be the number 8, not the word written 8, is hereby authorized to allocate all funds received from fines assessed for violations for handicap parking in said city or towns to the commissions on disabilities. Now, when it says that for the commissions on disabilities, that is just for programs and areas of construction for anything that has to do with disabilities. It does not go for salaries or anything of that nature. So it's just for funding. That money, if it is collected, it will be for funding of projects. It will be for funding a handicap patrol. What some communities do is they'll have a patrol. They'll be able to have their own parking meter attendants that can go around and see if there's any violations. And possible on this, what I also want to do is possibly increase the handicap parking fees within the city of Revere. We are in the stone age of handicap parking fees compared to other communities. People are parking in handicap parking spots because the fines are nothing for them to pay for. I had also mentioned at one of the meetings that I went to about the sidewalk parking that I mentioned last month is handicap parking signs, especially near the commuter rails, should be limited to 2 hours. Because we're getting people coming from out of the town, North Shore, wherever, especially Lynn, Nahant, Swampscott, they have a handicap placard. They're going near a train station, especially off of Shirley Ave, parking at the handicap signs and staying there all day and taking the train into Boston so that they don't have to pay the fees to park in a parking lot. So, impossible, I would like to, come up with a letter that we could send to the mayor to go to the traffic commission, part and parcel. First, I know we have 8J because we have a commission on disabilities, but I also want to adopt section 22G under chapter 40 to see if the funds that are collected for handicap parking can be allocated to the disabilities department to pay for infrastructure work that needs to be done, so that we have funds Because when you go out for grants, you want to be able to do matching funds too. It allows it to be able to get the grants a lot more. And we'd be able to do a lot more projects and programs for the disability without having to always try and ask for money if we have some for that. So I wanted to possibly create a letter. I don't know if anybody is good at creating letters, they can create it with me. But in part and parcel, if you also take a look at this MOD blog that I had sent to the commission members, disability parking violations and abuses and what you can do. In the gist of it, some communities, there are a few in Massachusetts, there are a lot in other states, that the chair, vice chair of the Commission on Disabilities have the power to issue handicap parking tickets for people that are parked in a handicap parking spot that do not have a handicap plate or a handicap placard. So we would have to ask if we would be able to do that, and that also falls under creating the handicap parking patrol program. So I wanted to see your thoughts on possibly creating that, because you have a lot of people that will go sit in a handicap parking spot and they just sit there and think they can sit there. They don't have a handicap placard. It happens to me all the time. I see it all the time, and I go up to them and tell them that you're not supposed to be parking here. And they say, "Who are you?" I say, "Who am I?" I said, "Well, you're not supposed to be parking in a handicap spot if you're not handicapped." "Well, I'm just sitting here, I'm not parking." "No, you are." And there are several parents that I know at the Paul Revere School that are disabled that need those 2 parking spots to park in. And with them being there, the other problem is they think they can park in the laddered spots in between handicap parking spots. That laddered spot in between handicap parking spots is there for a reason. It's not there for somebody special that can go put their car in the middle there of 2 handicap spots. That's there so some people that are handicapped can open their doors and get out of a wheelchair and get in it. So because there's a laddered spot in between 2 handicap spots, that's not a special parking spot. That's designated for handicapped people so that they can access and enter their vehicles. So I don't know if anybody has any comments.
Are you looking for assistance in writing 2 letters? One, to see if the town will accept the provision of Section 8J, and the second letter to, I guess it would be to the commuter rail regarding possible handicap.
It would be Revere. No, it's the City of Revere. The City of Revere's handicap parking spots on the street.
On the street, I apologize.
Because the ones in the lot they have to pay for.
Correct, okay.
It's the ones outside on the Revere streets.
So it's about the City of Revere.
Yeah,
See if they'll accept the provisions of Section 8J, so we can do more.
Yes.
For the disabled in our
Yeah,
community.
and also if we could increase, so the letter would have a couple of parts to it. It would be accept the provisions of HA Section 22G, so that we could create a parking patrol program so that the money that's collected for handicap parking violations will come to the Commission on Disabilities. The second part of it is we would want to see about increasing the fees for handicap parking violations. And the third part is we want to see if there are other towns, cities and towns in the Commonwealth that allow the Commission on Disability chair, vice chair to be able to issue handicap parking violation tickets.
I'll be more than happy to work on that letter with you.
I believe it's Cambridge, I believe it's Newton, a few cities, and believe it or not, it is a great help for the disabled people that need parking spots, because you're parking, by the time you call the police or the parking patrol officer, they're out of there, and they don't have any respect for anybody, but you hit them in the wallet, they'll have respect.
Ralph, can you just give us an idea what the fees currently are?
Yeah.
Or some examples?
The fees currently right now is $100.
Okay.
The fees right now are $100. The city of Boston is $200. I believe the city of Charlestown is $300, I think. I'm not positive.
Thank you.
But most are in the $200 to $250 range.
When was the last time that was evaluated?
I don't even know.
Then that might be something to be put in
Yeah.
that letter.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the fees before for a few years back on how much was,
We'll do some research before we write the letter.
no, I know how much was brought in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got that a few years ago when I wanted to propose this. I had all that, and it was upwards a few years ago, maybe about $20,000 in 1 year. Yeah, so that's for handicap, parking in handicap spots, yeah. Parking, different handicap violations.
And it's not, and just one more thing on this before we continue. It's not just the handicap spots that we can find on the regular public streets. We also, correct me if I'm wrong, we can also go into private lots.
Market
like a
basket,
Stop and
yes,
Shop or a
yes,
Market
yeah,
Basket.
yeah,
There's a handicap
yes.
space and someone's parking there.
Yeah.
We can still tag that, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, they currently do go into BJ's, I know, they do the Market Basket, the Stop and Shop, yeah, they do, yeah, they're enforcing it right now. It's a lot on them right now, it's a lot on them. Any other questions before I open it up?
I have something to say.
Sure.
I don't know whether I'm out of order or whatever, but I can't let this go without having my...
Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, well, I thought you knew who I was. Rocco Falzoni, 55 Toscano Ave. Ralph, Chair. Well, first of all, Chair and Vice Chair. It's been a long time since I've been up here, but over the past couple of months, finding what's going on with you guys as far as being a commissioner of a major city, Revere. Ralph, when you went to did anybody oppose you when you go up and tell these people who you are and what you're doing here? Do they give you an argument or anything like that, or mind your own business?
2 weeks ago at the Paul Revere School, I asked the parent to move out of the handicap parking spot because I had an elderly grandparent that needed the park in the spot. And the gentleman told me, "Who are you? Don't tell me what to do." And I had my Commission on Disabilities badge. I said, if it was a cop here, you would have got a ticket and you would have got towed, and I'm asking you to move. He said, I would have rather there be a cop here giving me a ticket than you telling me to move.
That was my point, because you do have some identification showing who you are.
Yeah, I have it on me. Yeah.
All right, so the other issue is, how can we step this up by you giving tickets out yourself?
Well, that's what I want to ask for doing. Yeah, that's what part of this thing that I'm asking in the letter, that the chair or the vice chair, there are cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that the chair and the vice chairs of the Commission on Disabilities are granted the authority to do tickets, not only in Massachusetts, a lot of states do it, and I have the documentation highlighted for my commission members that do it.
Okay.
So it is, but it has to be approved and granted.
Is it approved by the Commonwealth or by?
No, it has to be individual cities. Each city can adopt it.
All right, the other question I have is, let's say, for instance, where if they approve you to get that special permit, you write up tickets, how would you feel about carrying?
Oh, I wouldn't have to carry.
You sure about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
In today's world?
No. No, we wouldn't have to
So
carry.
we'll disregard that.
Yeah.
Another point, on the first offense, parking in a handicap, you said it was $100.
For the record, I am a licensed gun holder, for the record. But I wouldn't have to carry that around to give someone was parking illegally. I would definitely, I'd be more than happy to give out tickets if someone's abusing the system or if someone shouldn't be parking. I have no problem putting a ticket on their car ASAP.
All right, great,
I have no problem with that. I wouldn't even hesitate.
great. Well, that was kind of harsh what I just said, but I just wasn't.
No, it's okay.
just a good question.
I would, yeah,
That was just my
I'm
opinion.
licensed to carry, but I'm not gonna walk around. I'm not John Wayne. I'm not gonna walk around the Star Market looking for, oh, there's a handicap, no plate on it, okay, slap a ticket on it, no. Yeah, I'd rather have this be handled by the Traffic Commission, honestly, than us taking that responsibility. But if they wanted us to help in addition to what the Traffic Commission does or the local police, I have no problem with that.
If you take a look at what I highlighted there's a page in the highlighted, and you'll see the reasons why I highlighted. Like I mentioned before, the problem is you could, anybody can call, but it's crazy. Not that it's crazy for an officer to come all the way there. Number one, it's hard for them to be able to get there, and by the time they get there, they're going to be gone, and it's not going to stop them from keep doing it, But if somebody else that was there had the authority to issue them a ticket, It's gonna stop them.
You're talking like a full-time job, too.
Well, no, it's if you see it, you don't have to walk around. If you're in the area and you see it, you have it, and you can do it. How many times would you be at Market Basket or Stop and Shop and you see people parking in a handicap spot?
Every time I go to Stop and Shop, it happens.
That's what
Every
I'm
single
saying.
time.
And if you had, and you're in Stop and Shop, and you had the authority as the vice chair of the Commission on Disabilities, and you had a ticket book, it's not that you're gonna be going walking around issuing tickets. It's when you see it. Michelle can
No.
talk firsthand from her dad seeing it every day at the Paul Revere School. He sees how the people abuse me left and right and doesn't know how I do it and how I keep my cool. I just get abused left and right. No respect at all, none whatsoever. And I feel bad for the grandparents and the parents that are disabled that can't park in these spots.
Yeah, and I can tell you, my dad, which he loves you, tells me every day, like, I don't know how Ralph does it. I don't know how Ralph does it. And he tells me the arguments, especially with the handicapped. I know it's a challenge there. This morning was a challenge. I mean, nobody listens.
Now, the first offense is $100.
It's always 100. Yeah.
Second offense,
It's still the same amount. But what they do is there's another thing that's going on is a lot of people are using fake handicap placards and expired ones. So those ones get confiscated and those get sent to the registry of motor vehicle along with a copy of the ticket that has your license plate. And then you also will get another fine from the registry of motor vehicles.
okay, I just want to let you know. Thank you.
Speaking of, just to tie up the Paul Revere, just to finish this off. Last year, you were hit by a vehicle.
Almost, yeah.
Was that because someone was parking in a handicap spot?
Oh, yeah,
Was that-
yeah,
Was
yeah.
it really?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Just wanted the public to know that.
Yeah.
And I love you too, Ralph.
Yeah.
Like her father.
So do I have a motion on the floor that I can, what I'll do is I'll draw up the letter. I'll send it to everybody first before I send it as quick as I can and then let me know. So if I have a motion to draw up a letter of what we just discussed, sure. Robert made the motion
Yeah, I'll make the motion, Ralph.
I'll second that motion.
and have a roll call of members. Mr. Bent?
Yes.
Mr. Frenny?
Yes.
Ms. DeVellis?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Perno?
Yes.
And myself, Mr. DeChico, yes. Okay. Okay. Number 7 is just some public information. Beginning April 1st, every home in Revere is going to be receiving an invitation to participate in the 2020 federal census. Whether you respond online, by phone, or by mail, the survey is easy and secure. And we just want to let everybody know that the information is protected and used only for the purpose of getting an accurate population count. A lot of people are under the misinformation that this is going to be turned into someone or turned into anyone. This is just for the edification for the 2020 census. There's over 900 billion, is it billion or million, Mr. Novoselsky, that's out there for federal funds? Billion dollars that is out there. Revere has always been on the less receiving end because people do not fill out that census. This money can be used for all kinds of capital improvements, programs, and whatnot in the city of Revere. I had sent, there's a pamphlet in here with about at least 50 different programs that money could be used for to my commission members. If anybody would like to see that, please reach out to me and I could get that to you. But Revere has never gotten their fair share. So there's a big push within the community from the mayor's office, along with Diane Colella from the elections department and Dimple Rana from the Healthy Initiatives department. So we would just want everyone to do their part and please fill out the census this year. And there'll be more information on that. But if everybody spreads the word, and if everybody fills it out and everyone tells one of their neighbors or friends to fill it out, that would be very helpful. So we would appreciate the assistance on getting out the word for the 2020 federal census. And again, it is, if there's misconceptions out there that it's gonna hurt people, it's all misinformation. This information does not go anywhere. it is totally protected. Anyone have any
Yeah,
comments?
Mr. Chairman, how do we get what you say, put it in words of all different languages
They-
and pass it all to the schools?
They-
Let them know, yeah, they have it, but you know, your information is protected and used only for the purpose of getting an accurate population count. Do we need to add lib on that so they respond to it? Because that might not seem enough for some residents who are recent to our community.
Well, what they are, they're doing it in 9 different languages. They're going to be putting it out in 9 different languages in the city of Revere. And
But is the verbiage there?
yeah, yeah, it is going to be out there. They have different community members that are going to be reaching out to different ethnicities to make sure that they get that out. Different community leaders and different organizations and groups to get that out there. So there's no misinformation or misconceptions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we may also have, someone may come to our next meeting to do a presentation. I give them that invitation to do that. Especially if you take a look at it, the disabled community could benefit greatly from funds if we have residents that fill it out and say that they're disabled. Because that is, that's not really, what's the word I'm looking for, Pauline? That's not really documented greatly. We're so under documented in how many
We are
disabled residents.
underdocumented and evaluated.
Under-evaluated, that's the correct word. So Revere is one of the communities that statistically has always not filled out the census. So there are 2 censuses this year. There's one for the city of Revere, and then there's the federal 2020. So just so that everyone has that information. So that is item number 7. Before we open it up to any other residents, I just wanted to acknowledge Council Ira Novoselsky for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
And if I could, Revere CPAC once again wants to thank you for continuing to support us at our annual walk. So thank you.
So we've heard on a couple of things. I don't know if Mr. Falzone, if you had anything else you wanted to mention. We have it open up to an open forum for any questions or comments.
Absolutely. Getting back to the last time I seen you, Mr. Chair, was, I think about 3-4 months ago. And you had put a motion in about plastic straws, plastic bags, and plastic this and plastic that. So your motion didn't get too far, as I understand it. It kind of shut you off.
Well, yeah, what it is that they didn't vote on it, so they haven't brought it back up to vote on banning them.
Well,
So I was an opponent of it, and that's what I went up there for, to oppose them banning it. So instead of them voting on it, they just tabled it. So as of right now, there is no ban in effect for plastic straws. If it does come back up to the council to try and ban them, bet your bottom dollar, we'll all be up there again in opposition of them banning it. So as of right now, there is no motion to ban plastic straws in Revere.
My opinion, here's the fact. I might not be pretty close to dates in years, but 35, maybe 25, 35 years ago, there was a problem with cutting too many trees down because we had a major issue with that. So we went to plastic bags. So 30 years later, the plastic bags were polluting all the oceans and so forth and so on. Now, I remember, I could be off again with my numbers, but millions of dollars was put into the Boston Harbor. We cleaned up our problem in the Boston Harbor. Was that 25, 30 years ago, or pretty close to it? So the issue is now is worldwide. So we don't live worldwide. We happen to be in an area where we take care of our problems in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's the Atlantic Ocean. Lakes and streams is a whole different issue. That's their community should take care of that for themselves. But my issue was the fact we're a Commission on Disability, to make a motion on something like that, how ridiculous. People that are paraplegics, people that are in wheelchairs, and they have to worry about who's going to help them drink or whatever. Paper melts, it disappears. Plastic is a way to go, and they bend and they're good forever. So the other issue I have with also the Commonwealth, the Commonwealth says something, and each town has to commit with that, what the rules and regulations are, or each town has its own separate entity versus the Commonwealth. Or if the Commonwealth says something, does, like say, for instance, Revere has to go with that proposal, or you're on a different point of view?
If the Commonwealth bans plastic straws throughout the whole Commonwealth, then we have to ban plastic straws. Right now, there is nothing proposed through the state. Right now, there's just separate initiatives through different cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And if, from my monthly meetings, there will be a very, very strong pushback from disability commissions and organizations if they try and ban plastic straws.
And the other issue I have, when this new administration was sworn in, I happened to be there, a lot of us were up there, and one of the incidents that I thought was very, very unique is when the Mayor Brian Origo turned around and says to the audience, the council members, please stand up. And when they all stood up, it was like, here we are one team to help the city of Revere. I never forgot that. The issues that I have when there were few council members were persistent about plastic straws, they never let it go. Plastic bags, they never let it go, they were on it. And for them to keep pushing on something like that, where it was already understood that the Commonwealth had made that a known fact, it was time to go on to something else, but they kept on pushing it. And it's kind of funny that Ira, Mr. Novoskowski, is here, Councilor Ivan Novoskowski, Vice President. You'd think he would have some input about talking about what's good for as far as plastic goes, what good is not plastic does. But it seems that every time there's a major issue, they always go to something else. For instance, you're talking about, that's a whole other story. I'm not here.
Well, what it is a councilor can bring up any motions and then the council can vote on it. So once it be brought up, if it gets, and then they just can move on because it's just not decided on. So in defense of Councilor Novoselsky, it's just that one of the councilors had brought it up. It wasn't brought up by the full council. One council had made the motion that wanted to ban plastic straws. So that's why it just died in committee and was tabled. So that's why they just move on to it. So it doesn't have to be brought up. The only time it will be brought up is if a council member wants to pass an ordinance to ban it. So if no council member wants to pass it to ban it, then it doesn't have to come up and be discussed anymore.
Oh, so that's not dead in the water. That's still viable. That might have a chance.
Well, if they want to bring it back up, but like I said, you'll have a lot of opposition to it. So.
Very good.
So you have me fighting for it, so don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Anything else from any committee members? All right. Ms. DeBellis, would you mind reading item number 9 for us?
Reminder, the Commission on Disabilities has office hours on Fridays from 8:15 to 12:15 in the Veteran Service Office in the rear of the Legion Building at 249R Broadway, which is right next door to City Hall. You can call for an appointment if you would like, but you do not need one. You will be able to talk to someone from our 311 Service Center on other days when you call our office at 781-286-8267. They will be able to answer most questions, but if they are unable to, or if you would like a call back from our office, they can transfer you to the Disability Office voicemail. Someone will get back to you just as soon as they can. Also, please let us know if you would like something discussed or brought up and added to our monthly meeting agenda. You can let us know if you would like to come and speak on any issues or concerns. The Commission is here to help and assist all the disabled residents and families of Revere.
Thank you. So next steps, me and Vice Chair Freni will create those letters, and I'll send you a copy of them so that I can get them out. Also, if anyone wants any of the electronic copies of anything that I have, please reach out to me. Before we have a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to wish the residents of Revere a happy Valentine's Day, along with my 3 female chair members on our committee. I also wanted to wish a special Valentine to a special person, my mom. Her mom's birthday is on Valentine's Day. So Mom, happy birthday and happy Valentine's Day on the 14th. So if I can have a motion to adjourn. I got yelled at by my dad for not wishing him a happy birthday on his birthday on Columbus Day, so I wasn't going to make that mistake again. So if I have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second it.
Okay, and Robert seconded. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 10th. Thank you, and have a good rest of the month.